It's it is a truly great documentary that everyone should go and see. That's like my thoughts on it. To
Thank
make you
you
feel,
very much.
it's really great. And I think to start off with the thing, it's like, did you go and buy meat after seeing that birthing scene of the
No,
cow?
no, I turned vegan. No, no, I didn't. It's funny. Nick, who is one of our exec producers on this, is vegan, so I guess I really should get his thoughts on that. But
Yeah, but like the reason why I wanted to do the joking question as the opening thing is because I think one of the true strengths of this documentary is that you never are laughing. You don't walk out of it being like, he is a weird man. Let's laugh. It was making fun of him. Like the documentary is not like that. And how was that important when you went in to be like, it's not a film like, don't get me wrong, some of the things you do see are like, it's gonna laugh at. Like
yeah,
there's
they
no
are
helping that.
objectively very
They're
funny for sure.
but like you never walk out being like, he was a crazy old man, like he fun, like laughing, and I think that's a true strength. So was that important to you to make sure you had that tone?
It No, it was because you'd have to be a very unpleasant kind of person to spend years of your life and your time and your energy, resources, other people's money to just go and make a mean-spirited film that laughed
Mm-hmm.
at someone. What a waste of time. No one gains anything from that. Um, Look, and everyone who goes in blind and watches this, as I'm sure you did, you do laugh at it the first time you see it. I
Yeah.
certainly did. Everyone I've shown it to who's been involved in the film does, because you're lacking context. And when you just go into this bizarre little corner of the world, it's very, very funny, and you will laugh at it at the start because you don't know this man. But then, when we found this, we thought, well, we don't know what to do with it, so we wanted to dig into the story first.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, there was not just enough of a story, but a fascinating story that ultimately turned this from a short doc, which was originally meant to be, into a feature-length film telling Charles's life story.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, tone. I put so much of that down to my remarkable editor Hannah Christensen, because we all went in with a sympathetic eye and an empathetic eye. You've got to,
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to, because I genuinely admire the hell out of my film subject. But
Mm-hmm.
she brought. I don't want to give away too much about the film, but there is one particular sequence, and it's very stylized, and it's towards the end. I think you might know what it is. It's a particular montage
Yes.
that embraces VHS technology. Now, I wanted to go a lot more brutal with it because of what that sequence represents about something Charles was going through in his life, because uh, it's nasty and it's horrific and it affects a lot of people. And I thought, we want to go to Charles's lowest possible point, the darkest possible point, to make everything else that much more uplifting when he has his ultimate victory towards the end. Hannah insisted that we dial back and add like a little bit of peace and a little bit of optimism and a little bit of spirituality to the end of that sequence. And every time I watch that, I just think that instinct was bang on the money.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to do a documentary about a tricky subject, it comes down to your editor. How much empathy and admiration and respect does your editor have? Because sometimes when you're so close to the topic, as I am with, the personal family connection, you can
Mm-hmm.
sometimes go a little bit too far because you're wrapped up in it and you're not thinking of how people might receive it, which is why Hannah was so invaluable.
That's we'll go back to the editing because the reason why I want to keep the tone is because I think in the age of digital, anyone can make documentaries and put it onto YouTube now. And I don't know if I'm guessing you've seen. There's a lot of mean spirited people out there that make a lot of stuff, and it's just simply like, let's make fun of this. And recently, recently, it was a couple months ago, like Red Letter Media was brought back into the conversation about, is their Star Wars reviews even critical or just being mean and mean spirited?
Mm.
And that's why I think it's important to ask, is because especially nowadays when people are becoming more aware of what of the subject matters and more aware and becoming, I don't want to be too the word woke, but like being a bit more empathetic is a better word to people, and not just simply like Because like gone are the days where like there's used to be like with like you like all like the shows on like British television where it's just laughing at people's pain, like the stupid videos they would make, like, oh, they got smashed in the face with a ball. And I think that this documentary really does make you feel like Charles was just a creative man that was just and had a tough life in many ways as well, and it's just excellent. And so speaking of the editing, I think the biggest strength is the editing, because when you get to the end of the story, you feel like this is the perfect length. It's like 70 minutes. It is not too long. It's not too short. Especially in a lot of documentaries, they kind of drag the subject matter
I
out.
completely agree. That was our biggest worry. We had a 4 hour cut of this at one point.
Yeah,
Now, obviously,
that's what I
we
was
were
gonna
going to
ask
trim that down. Yeah.
was my main thing was like, how long did it take you to get to like, this is the cut we're gonna show people, this is the one, this is the perfect length for, it's the ideally.
Yeah, it was painful. It was. I'm trying to think. May, June, July. It was about a 5 month edit, I would say. Yeah, it was 5 months. It was brutal. So yeah, we whittled a 4 hour cut down to 2 hours, down to 90, and we still felt it was way too long because, I see some incredible documentaries that are far too long to get to that magical 90-minute point, which is more industry standard. And, the Academy rules are it's, technically a feature film is anything over, I think, 40 minutes. But it's such an awkward length, and there genuinely was enough of his story that we're going, okay, we just about get away with 70, 75 minutes.
Yeah.
There's still little parts of me that watch it and I think, I could have lost another 5 minutes, because you want to maintain that goodwill. Like, I caught the last few minutes of the screening in Alabama. I was at for the film festival a few days ago. And it was very well received. And I remember, people laughing at the right points and being shocked at the right points, which is good. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to lose them. You want to keep their interest. So, it takes a lot to put your ego aside and go, okay, I love this bit, but does it actually work? So I would have a lot of arguments about stuff that I desperately loved. And then I'd have the producer and the editors going, look, I'm sorry, we have to take it out. And then I'll go, all right, look, let's lose it, and then we'll see how it is. And every single time, all their instincts were bang on the money. That's the important thing. I directed and produced, and I'm in it. You're not going to make the right call every single time. You have to surround yourself with a good crew who are not just going to say yes to everything. One of my favorite documentaries is the behind the scenes doc for The Phantom Menace. And it's funny and it's terrifying for filmmakers because nobody says no to George Lucas. Like, that's the reason that film ended up the way it is, not because there's elements in it that are interesting. I'm not a big Star Wars fan, so I can say that objectively. But just when you compare what he would have gone through making those original movies to everyone just, revering him for the prequel trilogy, and look how that film turned out, because it wasn't collaborative and nobody said no to him.
Yeah,
I don't want to be the Phantom Menace of docs, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
It's funny. Sidebar tangent is like, all my friends are into Star Wars, and I'm the one not into Star Wars.
I'm the pariah. Okay.
Yeah, and so much so that I'm friends with people who are friends who is like Star Wars Explained on YouTube, who's a massive Star Wars YouTube channel. And it's like, and it's really funny being like, I don't care about Star Wars. So it's funny that I'm like, even now I'm still talking. It still comes up. Star Wars. But yeah, that's the perfect length. Cause like I feel like in the theater, it's like when you're watching, you're like, this is where the film should end, because like everything's kind of like wrapped up and it just ends. And you're like, this is great. So it's like, it was one of the big standouts was the editing, just even throughout. And I want to ask about this because there's a lot of cool transitions where you transition from the real location to like the VHS footage. When did that actually like come about? When in the process about this is what we're gonna do is like show the real locations, do this really nice transition, because it didn't feel cheesy whatsoever. It felt like genuine. It was like really well done.
Well, we had a couple more that again, looked them in the edit and we realized this doesn't work. Every one of these transitions, we love the effect. Are you actually justifying it, or are you putting it in there because you think it looks cool? On a technical level, they were a pain in the ass to do. So here's the thing. I'd say at least half the movie, if not more, I wasn't actually present on set for, because we started shooting this thing in 2019. I moved to the US summer of 2019. This was before we had got Nick and Joe on board and we got financing and we found out enough story that it warranted being a feature. And I said, look, don't worry, I'll come back summer of 2020 and we'll wrap it up. Well, we all know what happened there.
Yeah.
But, you've got deadlines and you've got money from investors. You've got to keep going. So Dom and Ed, the other two producers on this, they would be shooting stuff in the UK, and we commissioned camera crews in Belfast and New York and LA because even I couldn't get there being in the States. And then I was shooting stuff here in Wisconsin, where I'm calling from right now, and Illinois and Michigan with my own little splinter unit. And there's time differences, and we're in the middle of nowhere for rural places. And we're constantly trying to coordinate over FaceTime and over Zoom when, there's no Wi-Fi signal, there's no phone signal. And again, you have to organize the hell out of everything and articulate your vision, and just you have to trust your crew, because even if I wanted to be there every waking second, there was every chance that we'd lose signal. And they've got to know how to articulate my vision, and I've got to trust that they're there on the day, they know what they're doing, we have a shorthand, and they can make the right calls when it comes to how they're going to frame something up, or which moment they're going to press the subject on when they're interviewing him if they can't get me, on the phone reliably with an internet connection. But I feel I've not really answered your question and rambled a little bit.
No, because I wanted to bring this up because of when it's releasing, and we did go through the pandemic, and you've said that you did shoot it during the pandemic. I'm guessing that is. And I feel like it's safe to say we hear a lot about in the news about how big budget productions were going through the pandemic. So I want to ask you, it's on the just kind of a drop in the pond really in the filmmaking side. How was it on that smaller end scale to shoot during a global pandemic when it's you're just a tiny crew essentially. You're not
right.
You don't have the capabilities to safely fly over and do all that sort of stuff. So how was that?
Absolutely miserable. I would never make another film like it because you have a lot of good and bad, very, very micro budget indies like ours that shot during then, and shocker, most of them about 2 people in a room, which makes complete sense, and you understand why. We were kind of doing what a Hollywood blockbuster would do with a tenth of their catering budget. And every time we're like, do we really have to do New York? Do we really have to do LA? Do we have to do Belfast? And just every single time it was creatively justifying. We're like, shit, all right, I guess that's a few more gray hairs to add to my scalp, and a little bit more of the budget to do, because you want to make sure that people are safe and healthy, and you're doing we didn't have a COVID coordinator, and I don't want to put anyone in harm's way. I don't want to put myself in harm's way when I'm going out to shoot the States. So yeah, it was tricky. We got fortunate that a lot of it, I shot all my scenes in the film up in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. A lot of the stuff I was shooting was, outdoors, just because we liked the scenery anyway, and we were shooting, late spring, early summer. So it wasn't even, a practical thing if we want to keep people outside to make it safer. No. But even just creatively, I have a shorthand with my my AD and my DP, Dom and Ed, the producers as well. And I can't be there to bounce off of them and vice versa. And it's a horrible way to make a film, because one of the tricky things is when you're making a documentary, you are trying to develop a relationship with your subjects and make sure that they trust you enough to open up, and that they're comfortable enough on camera, because we had 1 or 2 people who didn't make the final cut, and I think one of the reasons was they were very interesting, and it's not their fault, it's down to me. If I'm not getting a good performance out of a subject when they're being interviewed, usually that's a failure on the filmmaker's part. We just looked at them in the edit and realized this just isn't working. And, those were more often than not shot, and I'm not there. I'm just speaking to these people on the phone, because a lot of them are in rural England, a lot of them are older and not as adept with Zoom. And it just didn't work, unfortunately. And we got very lucky with the ones it did, because then I've got to make sure they're comfortable enough for me to go, great, you haven't met me, you're not going to meet me on set. Here are 2 other random people. Trust me when I say that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, because I think that especially with a documentary, because you have to reach out to these people, hey, we're to come do that, and then you go, well, I'm not coming. You know, the person you've talked to, these two people that I trust are coming, and then for some
Yeah.
people that might be like their like own anxieties might just come up, and they might not want to
It
be.
can scare them off. It's funny.
Yeah.
The very first interview that we shot was Denise, the woman with the butterfly jumper,
Hmm.
who I would argue is the heart and soul of the film. She's actually probably my favorite talking head. And I think she does such an important job of helping, bring empathy and sympathy to Charles from someone who knew him and his family very well. Um, she was she was very reticent to be on camera. She knew me and my family a lot better than some of the other local subjects did, so there was no kind of issue on that front. She trusted me because we knew each other in a way. But initially she just wanted me to bring the recorder and we do it audio only. So, myself and Dominic, we go there. We spent a good few hours just chatting with her and just making sure that she would be comfortable to even do audio. And because we were going there to shoot B-roll anyway, we had the camera. And I said, well, look, we won't see your face, but if you and I just sit down on the sofa and we'll go through all of Charles's cards, you see some of this in the film. We'll just have Ed filming over your shoulder. And then at that point, she just got so comfortable talking with me and knowing Dom and Ed. She had to stay for lunch. It was really nice. That at that point, it's not that much of a stretch to say, look, why don't we just repeat what we've been talking about and just set the camera up? You won't even know it's there. Just focus on me and don't look at the camera.
Yeah.
So, that was a great way to build trust. And I only did that with a couple of the subjects because then, it's all over Zooms, over FaceTime, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it must really suck not being able to do like be with everyone because of this whole pandemic. It's like it must, because like even like subtle calls, like doing like certain calls over Zoom is like it's a nightmare. Like it's just so imagine I couldn't imagine doing a whole movie being like talking to people on the other side of the world, being like, this is what I need you to do, because like and I'm guessing like there's sometimes, and you've always felt it's like when it comes to like certain shots and stuff, you have an image in your mind, like it's how I want to paint my picture, but then you have to tell someone how to paint your picture, and it's like it's like instead of like actually just like this is how you do it, and then let's recreate that, and it's like it just sounds like
I still very vividly remember the last day of shooting when we wrapped.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in Savannah, Georgia, way down in the south of the state for a friend's wedding. And I won't reveal who it is because it might be a little bit of a spoiler and it's a nice surprise. But there's one interview subject in the film towards the end. I think you'll know who I'm talking about. And I don't want to be too vague. I just don't want to spoil it for people who might want to watch it, give away those surprises. But I'd spent 2 years tracking down this interview subject and I'd given up all hope and just it all magically came together very quickly. So it's 5 a.m. the day after the wedding. I promised myself I wouldn't drink too much. Anyway, cut long story short, I'm hungover in an Airbnb at 5 in the morning because of the time difference. I have to be in my absolute A game. Like, this is such an important interview, 2 years in the making. So, I'm just like wincing through the pain. And again, this person, I really had to build up a development. I really had to develop and build up a relationship of trust with this particular person for a lot of reasons. And they were wonderful. It worked out very well. But it's 5 a.m. my time. I'm hungover. The crew's setting up. I'm trying to continue to make sure that my subject is comfortable. Anyway, it went very well. But then right after that, I call up it's another interview in New York I'm doing remotely with none of my regular trusted crew. I haven't even met this cameraman before. And it's the third reshoot we had to do with these subjects because, the lighting wasn't great the first time. Then it was the performance. So, you're trying to make sure that you get a fresh performance out of them. And it's the last day and they've only got an hour and it's with a crew you don't know. So, I'm never making a film like that. If there's another pandemic, and I hope there's not, I will either not do anything or I will do it with 2 people in a room.
Yeah,
because you miss that live set energy.
Yeah,
that was the thing. And I don't want to blow my own horn too much, but credit to the crews who were there. I think the talking heads all work both visually and in terms of the performance that the subjects give.
Yeah, it's
and it's a miracle, but we pulled it off.
Yeah,
so less than 30 grand. Our budget was
Jeez.
Very, very tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, compared to like another Talking Head documentary, it was that I saw at the festival. Way better, way better. It
And also,
was.
that's the worry with the talking head doc. You don't want it to be boring. And one of the criticisms I've seen of the film that I would 100% agree with. I'd be interested in your thoughts. One of the criticisms is I'm not that interested in all the people talking about what Charles did, or they're interested in the locals who knew him, but not people like me and all the Americans who were in it. And they want to see more of Charles. And I completely agree. I wish we had more archive footage of Charles. The problem is, we used the clips that needed to be used because they worked. And we have footage that isn't in the film just because it didn't work, or it didn't land an emotional beat, or there wasn't a joke in there, or it didn't reveal something about him. But Charlie Norman, Charles's cousin, who's in the film, he's the one who introduced him to filmmaking. He's a family member. It sounded like he was Charles's closest friend, especially towards the end. As the crew are packing up to leave after his interview, he said, "It's a shame you weren't here a few years ago." So they said, well, what do you mean? So he said, "I had 200 of Charles's tapes up in the
Oh,
loft.
jeez.
And I thought, well, I was clearing out a few years ago, and I thought, well, no one's going to want them. I don't have any use for them." So he threw them away.
Oh,
Hundreds of tapes. So I'm really hoping when the film plays a little bit more of the UK, someone might come out of the woodwork and have a tape. But if they don't, this is it. This is everything that
yeah.
exists of Charles's work, which is heartbreaking. So yeah, to everyone who's like, yeah, the film's okay, I just want to see more of him and less of them. I agree. I just wish we
Yeah.
had more of him.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't mind the American side of it because all the people who found the VHS later and watched it, because that's a big trend of people watching weird VHSs, and I felt that that's also a really important part of the story is it coming outside of just the people in that village. I think that's a very important part, and I just felt they were all interesting to listen to. So I don't necessarily agree with that criticism. They
Well,
can.
I appreciate that. I think we justify the inclusion of everyone
Yeah,
who's in
I
the
agree.
film, and that legacy part and the international appeal is very important.
Yeah, I just feel like people should watch the Hallelujah documentary, then they can see what stuff that needs to be cut out of that
Oh
fucking
boy,
movie.
oh,
Oh god,
controversial. I haven't seen it yet. But
it, it's way too long. It's way too long. That's all
okay.
I'll say. Uh,
I will add it to the watch list then. Thanks for the
yeah,
warning.
but yeah, it's just so let's try to figure out what to say now because there's a lot of detail there. So
I was actually kind of curious if you don't mind me asking a question.
no, it's fine. You can.
Sure. So, we played it down in Alabama, and just they absolutely loved it. Like I was shocked how much they loved it. We won the audience award that last night, or the night before, I should say. So it clearly went down pretty well there. The Midwest in Milwaukee it played, really well. They booked some more screenings. But I'd be interested. This feels like not just a uniquely British story, but a uniquely English story, right?
Yeah.
And we haven't played Ireland or Wales yet. But I don't know how many other Scottish people are in the audience. But I'm wondering how much of a universal thing there is. Like, was there stuff there that were you interested in it because it's a subject in a part of the country that you're not aware of, or I don't know. I guess I was interested in the appeal of this. Feels like a very English kind of tale.
Because I explain this to a lot of American friends. People don't realize that even though we were just a drive up the road, there's huge differences in our culture, how we view things, exactly, and everything. It's like even though we're not technically different countries, we are different countries.
Vastly different in a lot of ways.
It's like this weird middle ground.
Yeah.
So I went into it, and it was a press meeting, so there was not a lot of people there. It would have been amazing to see a huge crowd of people, because it's some of the reveals, especially later on, are mind blowing, to be honest. And you're it's holy shit moments, especially near the end. But I won't spoil for people because I think I do want people to see this documentary, and hopefully it does get a big release in on platforms, because I think
Fingers
it should
crossed.
be a great watch. But I went into it because I got the email from the press people being it's Monty Python meets the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I was sold. I was I'm going. I have to see this movie, and I was because that's so wild. And then when I'm sitting there watching this, and it's yeah, this feels very English, but it's a good way, because I don't think it is. English in a way that it's very off-putting. It shows a different side of England that I think is very important to show, because, and you would agree, for a lot of people outside of Britain, they think it's Bridgerton or all that, like, all the accents are Downton Abbey, and it's like
Well,
they're all
everyone's
like
Hugh Grant, right?
or it's like, they go lovely jubbly or like a cup of tea, like no one's, and it's like hard to break to people, like no one says like lovely jubbly or any of those like expressions, like you might get like the one or two people, but it's not like we're all saying that casually to our friends, like
no, it's frustrating when people say British cinema. Most people just mean English stuff, and specifically the London centric stuff. They're missing out on, Scotland has its very distinct national cinema, as does Wales, and the English regions. I mean, one of the reasons we wanted to make this, and not the main reason, it was we had this incredible story and Charles's stuff deserves to be seen, is, I have grown up in the Southwest most of my life, both as a kid and as an adult. And apart from Hot Fuzz and Straw Dogs, and then I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's incredible. Bates, this Cornish film by Mark Jenkins.
Yeah,
I've heard nothing but good things. It still hasn't got a release here yet, so I haven't seen it. And then he's got Ennis Men. I've heard it's great. It's playing London Film Festival, played Cannes. So apart from those three distinct examples, and they're decades apart, you don't see that part of the country or those stories on film. I get that there's a lot of, British stuff that will only be seen in the UK and it wouldn't have an audience elsewhere. But I barely saw anything of that. You don't see East Anglia, you don't really see Yorkshire, and you've got all these stories that are getting missed out. And I thought, well, I want to do my little part to rectify that, like show Somerset on screen and show like this distinctly regional thing to help counter, look, whatever you and I might think of, Downton Abbey and whatever, it's like there's a place for them, good and bad, and they have an appeal, and I understand that. But, it's funny, it feels like the only decent thing that's had transatlantic crossover appeal are the Paddington films, which I just love, unironically, and they're imaginative, and they're warm, they're warm-hearted and that kind of thing. But that seems to be, and that's an immigrant story at the end of the day, right? And it shows a distinct kind of Britain that is not just like, the Richard Curtis stuff.
Yeah. And I feel this with Scotland. It's like, I always make a joke, like, we're not all heroin addicts,
well, yeah, because people see Trainspotting,
because everyone goes, because like, and it's hilarious when people go like, oh yeah, I have to listen to subtitles when I watch Trainspotting because I don't understand what they're saying, and I go, I understand every word. What you like? You're not listening properly, like, and it's so weird because like when you think of like British, like especially in like review more for Scottish cinema because that's where I'm located. It's like it's just Trainspotting, like that's like what as anyone the film can name. And now it's a joke. It's like, well, now we have Vin Diesel because he's a Fast 9 here, and it's like that's that. In some ways, it's like embarrassing that we're known for Trainspotting and the fight in Fast 9 because it's like. And the Avengers, they're the fight scene in a train station, Captain America.
Yeah. No, I remember when I was last in Edinburgh, that deli's there, and it just has Infinity War slapped all over the shop window.
Yeah, and it's like, I wish there was like more films about Edinburgh that weren't necessarily all, like just like, because like, and you'll notice like in all the parts, like it applies to all the UK. The UK is a beautiful country. It is stunning, and it's really depressing that a lot of like. It's mainly London. If it's a movie about England, it's London. And like, and especially with film scene, it's my big criticism with like film scenes in general. As a Scottish critic, it's the press screenings are in London, and you're like,
It's frustrating. It cuts out, and the fact that people refer to Wales and Northern Ireland, Scotland as the regions. Well, no, they're their own countries.
Yeah,
they've got a shared history and then their own unique history. It's everything about the industry is very London centric, which is why it's just we're not on the level of Bait. I'm very proud of the film, but Bait is a masterpiece into itself from what I hear. But that's why we need more regional stuff like this. I would hope that hopefully we get a little bit of success and it emboldens someone in another one of the English regions or rural Wales or something like that. There's going to be an incredible story to be told somewhere. And I just hope it gets the support that it needs. And if it makes you feel any better about Scottish films that cross over, it's still got a bit of a cult audience. But Anna and the Apocalypse is actually pretty popular over here.
I that's a film that I've heard of, but I need to watch it.
Man, I love that film.
Yeah,
it's a great.
I heard it's
film.
really. Yeah, it's the I just British cinema is just more than just London, and I really hope
Exactly.
that we move away from just London, because like especially as press, it's a nightmare when they go. It's in London. I'm like, I can't afford to go to London for a screening
Right.
you've told me about in 2 weeks, like, and they expect people
Yeah.
to go, and it's like, so I'm
Yeah.
hoping that
No, you
both.
bring up an important point because film criticism is very important, and there'll be people from like different economic classes, people with disabilities who are missing out because we're not making these screens accessible unless you're right in the heart of London. And even a huge city like Edinburgh, it's hard to get to a screen. They won't show stuff there. I imagine it's the same in Cardiff or Belfast.
Yeah, it.
If you're not even doing screenings there, then what hope is there to hear a voice that isn't just an English critic who's doing well enough to live in London?
Yeah, and so I'm hoping that like both the filmmaking, all of the film industry changes to be like, hey, the you, because like, and this applies to I think a lot of things, like especially because you lived in Britain, of course. Like, it feels like London and then the rest of the country, and it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that applies to everything, and it's like, okay, I love living in this country, but it's not just London. There's
Yeah, it's
more to the
frustrating. I
outside.
mean, this festival's down in Alabama. I think it's a little bit different here in the States. Different film festivals in the UK, if it's within their city or the region, like they really will try and make an effort. But um,
Mhm.
they really support cinema made within their states, at least down in Alabama, and it is the same here in Wisconsin where I live. You know, America's not perfect, but one thing they do try really hard at is to make sure, because their states obviously have their own unique cultures and identities, they really do try and support, regional or state
Yeah,
cinema, which,
and it's,
we could really look at to do in the UK and
and it's
copy.
also small things like, I know we have some degree with our film festivals, but like, to me the three big film festivals in the UK are Edinburgh, Glasgow, and London. There might be a few that I'm
That's fair.
missing, but they're the three big ones. But you also show that Fantasia Film Festival in America, which is,
Canada.
or
But
Canada. Sorry,
yeah, I
I
know.
don't
I
know where
mean, they're
it's.
basically so close to each
Yeah,
other. Yeah.
so Canada. But from what I've gathered, Fantasia shows like a huge range of different movies that aren't necessarily like, it's huge range. Like I'm pretty sure One Cut of the Dead showed in Fantasia, and it's like
Mm.
a lot of those movies. And there aren't film festivals like that. It's like we're gonna show like not necessarily weird movies, like different movies that aren't. I don't want to say socially acceptable, but you know what I mean, like that are just like less mainstream friendly and are more willing to push
Right.
boundaries. And I
Yeah.
wish that was a thing, because like, while of course like there's some like more like very violent movies out there, that I think they deserve to have platforms, and it sucks that, and I'm guessing you would agree with this, especially like there are some things like, if it's really violent, like no, or like it's got too much sex in it, no, we don't want to show this. Like we want to make sure Granny that might see this movie will have a good time.
Well, it's funny with this film because it's not a horror film. It's a little bit
Mhm.
odd and twisted and dark, but it isn't by the end. We've been having a lot of success with what are called fantastic film festivals. So, like Fantasia
Mhm.
or Fantastic Festival in Texas, we're playing that in a couple of weeks. I know there are a few in the UK. I think there's one in Scotland called Dead by Dawn, which I hear is very good. And
Yeah.
then Fright Fest is just finished up in London.
Mhm.
But it's those kind of festivals, more than a lot of the more conventional ones, where this film has been doing quite well in terms of getting accepted and well received.
Yeah.
And yeah, those audiences, I feel there's maybe less pretension because they're in there to see something that is dark and disturbing and twisted and not mainstream.
Mhm.
So, yeah, the festival scene in the UK could really use a few more like that. And I'm glad there's, one that seems to be very well received in Scotland. And obviously there's one in London. I think there's one or two in Wales. And I think there
Yeah,
might be one in Northern Ireland, I
I
think.
keep forgetting about Fright Fest, because Fright Fest does come to Scotland, but it's usually in
Mm.
conjunction with another festival. It's like we'll
Right.
do Fright Fest, but it's a part of Glasgow, for example. They'll be like they'll do like the late night screenings. But yeah, it's, I wish there was more, because like I wish I saw this with a crowd. To be honest, but like it's, I just don't know. It's like I feel like, I think more love for more films is just a positive thing in general. We can all agree.
No, I
It's
agree. I see the Tokyo Gore Police poster in the
the
background
Tokyo
with you.
Ghoul, yeah.
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 So clearly, like you're the main audience for the kind of thing a Fantastic Fest would show.
Yeah. I always go to like anime stuff. We gotta respect the anime, even if no one goes to it, because it ain't Disney. People won't watch animated stuff because it's I could go a whole track about animated movies and the state of that. It's don't want to go on that sidetrack. Uh, but like, I think that it's important to ask, like, what documentaries inspired you to make this film, or even just films in general? Like, are there even
Sure.
like fictional movies that like they're like, this is how I want you see stuff, to like, this is how I want even present it, or like the tone of a movie sort of thing.
No, definitely. The first two that come to mind, especially, are it's a beautiful Canadian documentary. I'd highly recommend. It's not funny like this. It's a lot
Mm-hmm.
more about the filmmaker's family history. It's called Stories We Tell, and
Mm-hmm.
that is a film that the editor and I both, independently drew that conclusion. So, I was chatting with her the other day, and we both realized, oh, we were both inspired by this. Um, what's another American movie? I don't know if you've seen that.
Might have heard
Might
of
be the
it.
best documentary ever made about a filmmaker. I adore it, and it's shot, 10 minutes down the road from where I live right now. American movie, that was a very important one for me, at least. Um, Stylistically, again, that sequence I was talking about earlier, I don't want to give it away, but it utilizes VHS technology. There is one particular scene in Russell T Davis's show Cucumber, if you've seen that.
Her Russell T Davis not seen a lot of his. I'm just excited for him to come back to Doctor Who. So I'll be
Yeah,
honest.
no, me too. It'll be amazing. Yeah, I mean, he's been. I'm particularly excited because of the stuff he's been doing in the meantime. Anyway, there's one, and I don't want to spoil it in case I'm not seeing it. There's one particular scene with a particular character in the show Cucumber, right towards the end of the series, that on an emotional level, it was so utterly devastating that when I knew we had to do a sequence similar to that, I reached out to the editor of that particular episode of Cucumber, and they gave me this wonderful, detailed breakdown of their thoughts going into it, and I passed it on to the editor. So, yeah, if there were one particular piece of media that inspired a particular moment, it would be that.
Mhm.
Um, but again, part of the problem with what docs inspire you is, I'm not going out and filming a whole bunch of stuff or reconstructions. So
Yeah.
it's hard, to say what inspires you apart from what maybe inspired how it was cut together. But
Yeah.
our editor, she listens to a lot of music as opposed to being inspired by films, whereas I'm kind of the other way around. But
Mhm.
yeah, stories we tell in American movie are the ones I keep going back to.
Yeah. And I understand that about the whole being inspired by, because like there's sometimes when like you like there's a lot of people who are inspired by filmmakers, and then when they make movies, you go, oh, you're heavily inspired by these movies. Like there's like the blueprints are still there, and it sometimes might be good to separate yourself from that and go, well, I am inspired by movies. It's like it still needs to be its own thing. It can't be like it can't feel like any other movie, because then
Mm-hmm.
I think that people get distracted by that. You know, when they see other plot points and or other things, they go, well, this is like this movie, and they kind of use that as like negatives as well. So it's
Yeah, no, actually, yeah, now I think about it, one thing that did inspire us was not any one particular one, but when you watch the start of the movie, and it's very similar to the trailer in terms of structure, tone, even use the same piece of music, we very intentionally set it up like it was meant to be a Netflix true crime doc, of which there are so many, and a lot of them are, manipulative and exploitative and surface level. And we wanted to set up a very particular expectation so people would go in looking at that footage, assuming that we're, possibly seeing a documentary about a serial killer or someone who did something horrific on a farm, only to then subvert that into something very, very different and very empathetic and more, hopeful and full of, life and
yeah,
optimism. Whereas if we had painted out from the start, oh, this man's a genius and he was kind and caring, I don't think it has the same kind of impact, because
yeah, I
then
would agree.
you're almost presenting what, when you see it for the first time, is very dark and disturbing, and you're laughing at it. When you present it and try and tell people to start, no, 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 you're all wrong. It's, it's this when you think it's this. It's kind of insulting the audience. You can't enter a dialogue. Whereas, like, take them on a ride, because what we did with the editing, we very intentionally structured it so that you all went on the exact journey that we went on. So from discovering that
Yeah,
footage and laughing at it and not being aware of the context and not thinking beyond that surface level reaction, to then every twist and turn that you discover along the way, we discovered in pretty much the exact same order. So, I've been really happy watching it in screenings with audiences. They had exactly the same reactions that I did when, you find that like third act reveal at the end of what's at the end of the tape.
Yeah.
And then when we found this extra footage that we didn't know existed before.
Yeah, I think that's like a huge positive of the movie. It's like you'll go from laughing to grinning ear to ear, and you'll be like, "Go on, Charles." You'll be like, that's what you're like. And to go on to that, like how, because like you joke about this in the movie. How annoyed were you about hearing Charles Carlson Kumen Farm like a lot? Because
Yeah.
you do like a quick montage in the movie, but like you're probably hearing that like hundreds more times than we do.
Yeah. Well, put it this way. It's great to watch it every single time I'm watching with an audience. It was great to actually watch it at the start when you're showing it to other people to get the reaction. When you're like 5 months into post production and you have to hear it for like the 10th bloody time after like a long day of going through audio, that's when it gets annoying.
Yeah.
That's the only time it got annoying, is when I'm having to like cut this back and explain to people, oh yeah, no, we want that time he says Charles Carson. No, not that one. The 5th time he says it.
Yeah, because
that got a little bit repetitive towards the end, but
because the montage was like Charles Carlson Kumen Farm. I was like laughing. I was like, this is hysterical, because like it's like you don't even change the audio. It's like he says it the exact same way,
right,
with the exact same tone, every time. But especially when we're going with like the whole editing structure, would you say there's a single moment in the movie where like, if we don't win the audience over by them, then we're never going to win them over, like with the narrative we're telling? Because I think that there's because wow, since I've seen it, there is a moment that I was in the audience, and I think it's when you start going deeper into his life, and it's I think it's when you, because it was like a couple of weeks now, when you start to really like he was teaching at the university, and it's like I think it's at that point, and you go, oh, there's a lot more to the story, and it grabs you. Is there more for you, like, if we don't win them over by this point, we're just not, they're just gonna be like not interested?
Yeah, sure. I would say there's 2 turning points. So again, it's always tricky when you don't want to give it away, because we have to dance around a few moments that you will very vividly remember.
Because one of the other turning points is definitely at the end, with the big reveal at the end.
Exactly, yeah. No, for me, I would say there's maybe 2 key turning points, I'd say, in the film. The thing is, like, the way we structure it, we show a lot of the juicy stuff, as it were, in the footage. And, that footage on its own just sells itself, and you've won people over, but they still have a particular image of who Charles is at this point. And then we have to jump into showing, oh, he's a human being with a life and, feelings and struggles and that kind of thing, and hopes and dreams. That turning point when you see him up at the school and he taught there for 30 years and he beat out a load of more, academically qualified people to get this job. If we're not starting to win them over at that point, because you see a lot of his life, and they're not going to care about the life beyond the weird guy in the footage on first viewing. And then the other turning point is, again, I keep bringing this up, and it's the moment that, is inspired by that Rusty Davies show, Cucumber. It's Charles's lowest point, and everything after that, the twists and turns, it's nothing but victory for him and celebration of his legacy. And if people aren't, fist pumping and like, punching the air, like, go on, Charles, if they're not absolutely devastated by that second turning point, they're not going to be like elated when they see all the stuff that happened afterwards. So those are the 2 key emotional turning points for me. And if we've not, if we haven't made you fall in love with him by that first turning point, we're screwed. If you're not devastated by the second, and everything that happens is that much more, incredible, inspiring afterwards, then we screwed up. We lost you.
Yeah, because when you get to university, because like you see all this footage, you see like, I think it's this when you see the cow birthing scenes at the beginning. It's like
that's it.
Yeah, and the placenta bit. I remember I showed a friend that it's like, do you know what like a cow's placenta? I see that bit in the trailer, and it goes, "What do you mean?" Like, and I told it, "There's the cow's placenta," and it's like weird when it's the montage of all the photos of the school, and you're like, oh my god, like, and it's like really like shocking. It's like he does know what he's doing. And then another scene where it's like, it's a scene with, like, you talk about the lawnmower, and he makes the thing where he can actually sit on it on his own, and you're like, you start to click dots. Like even then with the weird stuff, like he's clearly incredibly talented and knows what he's doing. And
There
another
was
thing,
one part of the film, sorry to interrupt, but there
no,
was
it's
one
fine.
part of the film that didn't make the final cut because it was genuinely very interesting. But again, we were lacking archive footage. We looked into, doing an animated sequence for it, that kind of thing, but it didn't quite work. Charles invented a machine, and I've never been able to get a straight answer out of anyone that I believe is still used today. And I'm going to get some of the information wrong, but he basically used a laser based system to weigh and categorize sheep. And that ended up in a Spanish language. Don't ask me how I found this, it took a lot of work. A Spanish language agricultural journal from the 60s names him personally for this device. Um, and I desperately wanted to like dig into that because he invented something that has had an impact on European agriculture since. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
But there was so little trace of it. This was the hardest thing. Was I met a lot of people who knew about different parts of his life, but didn't know about the others. The amount of people who were in this who had never seen this footage and didn't know he'd made films, and they were very surprised when I showed them. It's almost like we were one of the few people who had this complete picture of his life.
Mm-hmm.
From like when he was, a young man, right up to when he's making his films on the farm as an older man at his height, as it were, as a filmmaker.
Yeah, and like taking on with that, are you shocked by his filmmaking skills? Because he had to learn all like because you normally feel like he had to learn all of that himself. No one taught him. Like it's not
Right,
like now where I'm like, well, I want to learn a cool editing technique. YouTube, like whatever edit, like a match cut or something like that. He had to,
right,
and it's with VHSs as well. Like I wasn't
exactly.
around in the VHS era, dodge that Philips digital cameras,
Yeah.
but like that's not easy to like dub over. Like even the father is like he dubbed over VHS footage that he
Yeah.
took, and it's like, are you still impressed by his like skills as a
That was
filmmaker?
one of the things that immediately endeared him to me. Is not just that that technology is not easy. Nick and Joe were involved in transferring a lot of the footage onto VHS and then back. And they do that for a living, and it's a pain in the ass. They're always telling me about it. Not only is he working with that technology, he's doing it in the middle of nowhere with no support, and he's also doing it at a much more advanced age. And I think if you're 60s, 70s, 80s now, it's that much easier if you wanted to go and do that to do it with more accessible technology. And
Yeah.
you might have a grandchild who could help you, or there's YouTube tutorials, right? That's easy
Mm-hmm.
enough to access now. But for him, he's doing all that from scratch, very little help, middle of nowhere, and it's the old adage: if you can't teach an old dog new tricks, it's hard to pick something new up at an older age, and especially when you're also running the farm and caring for multiple members of your family. It's so admiring. He had so many more obstacles to go and do this thing and
Mm-hmm.
find this creative outlet than anything I've ever had to face.
Yeah.
I've always admired him as a creative. I really have.
Because that's the big one take. One of the other big takeaways to the movie is like, while the footage can be very weird and interesting to watch, you can't deny that he was very creative and like very bold of his vision of what that
Mm,
tape was going to be, and it's extremely fascinating that, and that's why I think a big strength of the documentary is that you see this fascinating man, and it is just a truly splendid time, and
yeah.
you see the lows, you see the highs, and there's a moment like we're gonna talk about, especially like, and there's a scene with the mum. I'm gonna be vague for spoiler reasons, and
Oh, yes, that yeah, that's a big,
with
well, that's almost a big turning point. Yeah.
yeah, with the mum, right,
Mm. I know you're talking about it.
and it is at the same time, and I guess you feel it's like utterly depressing, but also so because it's like it's a horrible like no matter
Yeah,
what like
yeah,
objectively it's
yeah, subjectively, and especially that initial reaction, that moment you're referring to, and
mhm,
anyone who watched the film will know exactly what we're talking about. It is, and that in particular was one I wanted to be very careful with to make sure that you don't want to lose people because some people get turned off by the presentation, which is why we got in some of the talking heads that we did to explain it and show that actually it's a very sympathetic act by someone who, has a real emotional intelligence that, as a society, both then and less so now, I think, is seen as taboo. A lot of the stuff in this can be judged as taboo at the start.
Yeah,
We set out to prove those people wrong. And
yeah, and I
actually, in some ways, he was very progressive and modern in his attitudes to that kind of thing.
yeah, because like it is shocking when the reveal happens, and it's like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like, especially now with if that was how he was going to deal with that scenario, it's like that's a very healthy way when you think about it. It's like that's a healthy way of dealing with it. There's a lot of like,
Right.
and if that brought him some ease, because we will never really know, it's like then that's I think that should be totally fine, and I think that's a powerful thing is that you're like you understand his thought process by the end of that scene because it's like that must be like you said a very difficult scene to handle because it's like
Yeah, because some of the other stuff in there is just it's funny, and
yeah
you put it in the edit. We wanted to be very very careful to let, because the thing is, like, we're using the footage of an artist, right? We didn't want to like butcher that and make too many of our own cuts and edits, because then it could look, oh, we've manipulated it to look funnier than it is or more shocking than it is.
yeah
So we wanted to have it as unaltered as possible. There's one or two tiny cuts we'd have to make for time or
yeah
to illustrate a point, but that's the bare minimum. But yeah, sorry, kind of brain fart there, throw it off a bit. But yeah, that footage is shocking initially, and it's that little bit tricky to handle because a lot of the other stuff is just he's crafted a joke and it's funny, so you can put it
yeah
in there, or it's a little bit odd or a little unintentionally kind of clunky or awkward, and there's a few laughs in that too. But then this one, any laughs that there are, they're more sort of shock laughs, as in people are gasping and they're genuinely shocked by what they're seeing on screen. And I
mm-hmm.
feel bad for anyone watching this who hasn't seen the film because it's going to, sound weird what we're talking about, but it'll make sense when you do.
yeah
Yeah, you want to handle that to make sure that you are setting it up so that you explain it and you're not just putting it out there for shock value. There's a reason it's in the film.
yeah yeah and I think that like a great editing choice as well is to introduce like a similar idea with the cat just a similar idea with the cat and it's
Right.
like on it like it's not really it's like kind of reincorporation you bring that back in and how he handles those sort of subject matters and I think that it's a really powerful scene and I think that people will be I think the range of emotions with that scene you'll be in shock you'll go from confusion to acceptance and then it's a generally great scene in the movie because I think that you would agree that if you messed it up, people would instantly be turned off. Like, don't care. Like, this is
Right,
fucked.
exactly. Yeah. Or, it can go other ways. People are like, oh, this is just manipulative and mean spirited.
Yeah,
It's such a tricky balancing act. But this is one of the reasons why later on we show some of this footage again. And having seen it with, some sold out audiences, their reaction to it at the start and comparing it to their reaction right towards the end when we reuse that footage, you could hear a pin drop. People are dead silent. I don't know. It's been nice to make people cry a bit. Like I know, at some of the screens there's been a few tears. People getting quite emotional about some of the stuff they see later on, which is great. Like I I haven't been to a screening yet where it hasn't seemed like we've done our job right, and people are reacting the way that they should be, which is good. Also a good start.
Yeah, because it's like every documentary should be a journey. You do take the audience on a journey, and it's a great journey. It's
thank you.
It's truly so. So we're gonna tackle this. I don't know how much you could talk about it. Do you have any plans to release this movie in the UK or around the world?
Cannot say anything yet,
okay.
But hopefully we've got some promising developments soon. But yeah, I mean, look, the goal is we want to get this out there, once it's off the festival circuit to as many people as possible. And as you see in the film, it's very clear Charles wanted the widest possible audience, and he wanted people to see his work. So watch this space. But yes, we have plans. It's just nothing's been like confirmed. I can't announce anything yet. But the festival circuit won't be the only place you see this film.
Yeah. So how's the festival circuit been? Because you see on the poster you go to a lot of festivals. How's that been for you taking this film to different festivals across the world? How has that been? for you?
Well, I was really upset. I had to miss the Edinburgh screening, unfortunately. So I'm just glad we had a lot of the crew there, and I
Hmm.
had to miss Fantasia, which would have been a great one. But then one of our partners at Sonderbar, pitched the production company. He lives out in Australia, so he's been, doing. We got Sydney in a few weeks. He's done Perth.
Hmm.
There's a few more coming up that way, that part of the world. So he's been covering that. We've only done the one UK one yet, and we have a partner in London. So he'll be making his presence known at a few more when they get announced, and in mainland Europe. And then I've been covering the US, and not a lot of people get that, so that's good. We kind of like make sure we
Yeah.
have a presence internationally. It's been good. We had our world premiere at Milwaukee, which is where I call home now, and some of the movie was shot, which was nice. Um, but that's hometown. You have a lot of goodwill.
Yeah.
And then we did Alabama, and we had a little bit of goodwill from one or two people because Dom went to university out there, so he's sort of a local but sort of not. But we only had a few people show up, and then I was honestly floored that we won the audience award compared to a lot of Alabama shorts and really really well made films that have
Hmm.
been festival darlings on the circuit. Um, but what's been nice is we've got one playing out in rural California in a couple of weeks. We had one in the middle of nowhere in Minnesota projected on the side of a barn, which is a really fun way to see it.
That's gonna be
But
awesome.
it's been going well. We've had I'm very very happy. We've had a generally positive response. The next couple of months are probably going to get crazy because we're still waiting to hear back from quite a few festivals
Hmm.
in multiple countries and multiple continents. So it's been going well, but it's been manageable, and I think it might just become overwhelming pretty soon.
Yeah.
But it's a nice problem to have.
Yeah. So, did you hear back from like how well the Edinburgh screens for your team? Do you know how well they went?
Yeah, I believe it went very well. We had two screenings after the press screening that you were at. And yeah, I believe it went very well. Audiences seem to like it.
Yeah.
So, we can't announce anything up. We've got at least a few more coming up in the UK. So I'll be very interested to see how the response is there as well.
Yeah. Because I think that because I saw on like when the press screen, we're in the biggest screen in the cinema. I think we're in screen
Oh,
one. So
okay.
it's
Yeah.
mass. So it's a massive screen, and it's something like if you can see on the big screen, you should go and see it. I think seeing it projected is like truly like magical. It's a truly
But we'll get it. We'll get it. We'll get it into IMAX. That's the
yeah. That's
that's the
well,
goal.
let's show every
A
film in
Cal
IMAX.
placenta on an IMAX screen. I would watch that.
I would watch anything in IMAX. Let's all be honest. Just to
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
intro play, like the countdowns. Like hell yeah, why not?
Yeah, I know it's fun.
But yeah, it's so. If you got any future plans for what you want to do after all this is over, once this is all
Yeah. No,
wrapped and done.
I'm shooting another doc at the minute. It's a
Hmm.
short doc, although Life on the Farm is a short doc. Who knows? Things change. So right now I'm just putting all my efforts into that. I do have Dom, who I mentioned, one of the producers on this. We have produced one of his documentaries
Hmm.
about another old man with arguably an even more extraordinary story than Charles. But yeah, it's a doc about child refugees in World War II.
Damn.
So very very different in tone.
Yeah.
So right at the minute we're busy getting that ready for the festival circuit, and just in the middle of shooting this other doc right now. Um, so yeah, I guess I want a holiday basically
Yeah.
once we wrap on that and get the other one out to the circuit.
And I think to like wrap this up, I'm gonna have like additional question I'm gonna ask everyone. So Scotland
Sure.
is famous for its rain. It's a very rainy country. So if it's a rainy day, what film are you gonna put on to watch when it's a rainy day and you're stuck inside? What's your go-to movie to put on?
Oh, that is a tricky one. It depends what mood I'm in, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to go with a movie. It was a rep screening I saw at Alabama, and I'd never seen it before. And I don't think enough people know about it. It's Xanadu, the Gene Kelly and Olivia Newton-John
Okay.
ELO musical. Um, it's very, very camp, and it's absolutely ludicrous, but
Yeah.
it's awesome. Like Gene Kelly's the king.
Yeah.
So honestly, like if it were a rainy day, and it's been nothing but heat out here at the minute, but we have brutal winters where we're all stuck inside, and it gets
Yeah.
to -20 with like 10 inches of snow. So there'll probably be some snow days coming up, and I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to put Xanadu on.
Yeah.
Xanadu and Anna and the Apocalypse.
No,
Those are my two
yeah.
answers. There you go.
That's some good choices. Yeah, I can't complain about the cold, the heat in this country when you're in America and it's boiling, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
and I go, it's like 20 degrees. Like, that's like a cold day for us. Like when I talk to Americans, and it's like, it's really hot for us here. Like it's not this, it's hot. Like people don't realize the pain when I'm sweating trying to sleep. Like, oh, I'm used to that. I'm like, yeah, we're not. That's not a
Yeah.
thing in this like not
No.
a thing. But Oscar, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for
It's
talking
a
to
pleasure
me.
for coming on. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you're my second interview ever, so let's.
I
It's
I
been an honor, and
I couldn't tell. I
I'm doing,
couldn't tell.
I'm very good at
You're
rambling.
effortless. You're effortless. So
All
am
right,
I. Join the club.
all right. So thank you so much for talking to me, and to anyone who watches this, I will. Well, keep people updated about the release of this movie. I want people to see this movie, and I'm hoping that people can get to see it because it's a truly special movie, and it's one of my favorites. It was definitely up. I think it was like my second favorite movie at the festival, maybe my third favorite.
I'm curious. What was your first?
I saw Goodbye Donglese, which is an anime movie.
Oh, okay.
I think the next one was The Narrow Road, which is a Hong Kong movie, and then it was your movie. I think it was the third favorite of the festival.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But they're also very like I hate comparing movies because how are you going to compare a documentary
I
about
know.
people working
Very,
during
very
the
different.
pandemic compared to this small documentary that's about a videotape? It's like they're all worth. It's a fantastic movie. People should go and
You
see
know,
it.
they all made it into the festival. They're all worth everyone's time.
Yeah, like that's the TLDR. It's like there's another three great movies. Put Life in the Farm on the top though, because we got the director here. Everyone else you can.
Thank you.
But no,
Appreciate
I'm excited to what you do next, and I just good luck with your next documentary, and wishing you all the best. It was a fun time talking to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, man. Take care.
Uh,
Speak soon.
See you.
Bye. Bye.
So that's been the interview with the director. Hope everyone had a good time. I did have to skip the intro because of he just showed up. We were a bit late. Thank you so much for everyone that was watching, and I'm gonna see you all. Actually, is there anyone actually in chat talking? Because there is. I'll replay the intro for everyone. If not, I'm just gonna end it. Just gonna end. Have a good time, a fun time. I don't hear back in 2 seconds. I'm just gonna go. All right, it was a fun time.